like blah, blah, blah. Louis 13 and it's all on me. You just bought a shot. If you think that you gon' knock me off the top, your wife in the backseat of my brand new foreign car. Don't act like you forgot. I called a shot.
KBLA Talk 1580. Yeah, we're talking money. Welcoming into the space this morning a business technology expert, entrepreneur, political commentator, and her business expertise is, she says, part of her commitment to nurturing the next generation of business and financial leaders for 20 years and counting. She's taught accounting, computer applications, financial literacy, and sports marketing at public and private academic institutions. Melanie Collette, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. I should have also mentioned you are a media personality in your own right and former vice chair of the New Jersey Federation of Republican Women.
That is correct.
That is correct. Okay, so, I mean, let's start with the basics, I guess. You know, for some people, and by some people, I mean me, it's difficult to even understand how, as a Black person, you end up conservative. And I don't mean, just mildly conservative. We know that plenty of Black folks are socially conservative, or they have conservative views on certain things and not others. But you are part of the National Center for Policy Research, Project 21, which is, in my experience, very conservative.
I think I'm going to take that as a compliment.
Yeah, you may as well.
Well, we are. Okay, well, you know what? I get asked that question often, and I would imagine that members of Project 21, other members of Project 21 also get that question. And I'll tell you, I didn't even realize my way of thinking was a thing, like that there was a label, until I started getting involved in politics. I didn't know that because I'm Black that I was not supposed to think the way I think. I had no idea, like literally, until I got involved in politics. And really until President Obama was running for election did it come to my attention that, like, Black people were supposed to think a specific way. But I've always been conservative in my thinking as a Christian and as someone who has read the Constitution. I literally just read both platforms, and I was like, okay, well, this area is more aligned with my values. The conservative area is more aligned with my values, and that's how I came to that conclusion. But honestly, until President Obama ran for election, I did not realize that was a thing.
I mean, even without mentioning, like,
would be problematic.
Yeah, well, problematic, that's, that depends on your definition of problematic. But we can go beyond Project 21 and just say Newsmax. I mean, you're a contributor to Newsmax, which is to the right of Fox News by most accounts.
Yeah, sure.
So that's not mildly conservative. That's wildly conservative.
But what is wildly conservative? Like believing in the Bible and the Constitution and letting that guide your values, letting the combination.
Well,
of the
people
two
on
guide
both
your
sides of the aisle believe in the Bible. I mean, I think that's a pretty slim. You've got liberation theologists. Maybe. I just don't think religion. This is not a theocracy.
Well,
at least not yet. I hope not.
Not religion. The Bible. That we're not. We're talking about two.
Okay, well, even the Bible.
Different.
I mean, you've got you've got your Raphael Warnocks, right? And then you've got you. I mean, so lots of people believe in the Bible, and their interpretation of it doesn't necessarily resonate the same way politically. So, yeah.
I was about to say, allow me to restate that.
Okay.
The way I was about to say that, the way I view the Bible and Bible principles. And so when you combine that with the Constitution and you believing that, our nation is under God and the things in the Constitution, that the Constitution is a valid document and it's done well for many years, and that as the people don't like within the Constitution, we have a mechanism to
I mean,
make
it's done very well for many
So-
years with a few tweaks. Like, we're not 3/5 of a person.
Sure.
It's just a few small minor adjustments. Women get to vote, things like that. Right.
Well, absolutely, and that's what I'm saying. Like, and that's what I said just now. Like, when it's not doing well, we have a mechanism
Right.
to change that.
Right.
So, and that mechanism is in the Constitution to say, listen, we messed up here. We need to fix this.
Yeah. Well, okay. So
you can do that.
let's jump into that. Even though I have more questions about your conservative journey, but hey, we have time for
Sure.
that. We've got the whole hour, which is great.
I love it.
So, speaking of Constitution and things that might need tweaking, and your own, focus on finance and in I'm sure your expertise in this area, given the revelations about, the shady contributions that are going on in the Supreme Court with Justice Alito and Justice Thomas, you think it's time to tweak the Constitution so we can have term limits for our Supreme Court justices?
I feel like we would not be having this conversation if it was an all liberal or mostly liberal court justice. Well, I mean, let's just be honest about that.
Well, I mean, but that's not the reality of what we're dealing with now. But if it was, I don't know. I kind of feel like we would be having the conversation, except you would be bringing it up to me, because I think that if Sonia Sotomayor or Ketanji Brown Jackson were taking $500,000 vacations from George Soros, you guys would have a problem with that. I'm pretty sure. You would get no argument from me. I would have a problem with that. That's a problem. That's problematic. But I do think that if the Supreme Court is only allowed to police itself, like this is why that those presidential elections are so important. I seem to remember a president that very snarkily said that elections have consequences. So and that was when. Yeah, but I mean, also you got the issue that Democrats can be wimpy and Republicans cheat often. So Merrick Garland should be a Supreme Court justice, but Barack Obama didn't have enough of a spine, enough of a backbone to stand up and make that happen. And that's just one example.
Well, that's true, but maybe he learned his lesson from what he did with the health care bill when he was warned, at some point the other side might get the majority, and then, they're going to do the same thing.
Yeah, but Obamacare has been a great boon. I mean, it's been a great boon to our country. Thank goodness we had it during this pandemic.
It wasn't good for me.
Well,
I did not get to keep my doctor. I actually lost.
Not good for everybody, but good for.
And I'm black.
So you're also, but you're also.
People, it did not help me
well,
at all.
not you, because you're a well-off black person. You're not a middle class or lower middle class or poor black person.
How did that happen with all the?
Well, I'm happy for you, but again,
so weird.
But again, you talk about you've always been conservative. So you've always thought that way even before you got into politics. But usually...
I'll tell you where it really started. Undergrad.
Are you... what do your parents do? What do your parents do for a living?
My dad was a psychologist. Unfortunately, he's with the Lord.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Died during his... while he was writing his dissertation.
Wow.
20-some-odd years ago, yes. And my mom was an assistant bank manager. My stepfather was an executive at the casinos.
Okay, so sounds like middle class,
Mm-hmm.
not wildly wealthy. I mean, you're not.
No,
yeah.
So not at all. And so consequently, when I applied for financial aid, I didn't got hardly anything. I had to work 2 jobs.
Yeah, same. I mean, that's not anything unusual.
Right,
that's called overpriced college in America. Yeah.
Sure. But I'm 52, so, that was many, many moons ago when college was affordable. And you could actually work it and afford college. But I did wonder when I saw students who were having like all this time to party and pledge and do all these things because they were getting all this assistance. I'm like, okay, I get paying for their school. Got it. Textbook, education, but why don't they have to pay for their food? Why no skin in the game? I used to ask those questions.
That's not fair. I mean, that's really not a fair assessment. Clearly, you're against affirmative action. I get where you're going with this. But the majority of students that receive financial aid then or now are working in addition to having financial aid, and they do have plenty of skin in the game because your roommate was blessed. I know plenty of college students. I've been one. That is not an accurate depiction that if you get financial aid you just get to party. No, that's not how that works.
You were asking no, I'm just saying you were asking about my journey and how I came to think this way, and I'm telling you that was my experience. What I was observing.
Yeah, your one roommate who happened to have hit in the jackpot. Okay, Melanie, we're going to continue this. Melanie Collette is my guest. We're going to continue this conversation, of course. I do want to get on the other side. I want to hear your thoughts on the decision on Black Wall Street. Again, we're in the finance wheelhouse, which is your bailiwick. So the judge said, well, just because you're associated with something doesn't mean you can prove individual harm. Love to get your thoughts on this from your financial expertise hat. It's KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
I'm James Alexander, a proud member of AARP. 1967, I was 17. That spring, my friends, the Barcades, and I made Soulfinger. It was a hit. Number 3 on the charts. That summer, we became the great Otis Redding's band. First gig, the famed Apollo. That fall, we toured. That winter found me in a morgue identifying the bodies of my bandmates and Otis Redding. My music and their memories bring me joy. The Barcades forever.
What would you call a joy that is as solemn as it is sweet and knows no bounds? A joy that's beautifully rooted in soul and resilience. This is Black joy, a joy that reflects pride and honor despite every challenge. AARP believes the power of Black joy is limitless, and we celebrate this joy supreme. Join us in celebrating Black joy at aarp.org/Black community.
Moments like my daughter telling me a new joke mean a lot to me. But after being diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer, or MBC, which is breast cancer that is spread to other parts of the body, they mean even more. I take Ibrance, palbociclib.
Ibrance 125 milligram tablets with an aromatase inhibitor is for adults with HR-positive, HER2-negative NBC as the first hormonal-based therapy. Ask your doctor about Ibrance and visit Ibrance.com. Ibrance may cause low white blood cell counts that may lead to serious infections. Ibrance may cause severe inflammation of the lungs. Both of these can lead to death. Tell your doctor right away if you have new or worsening symptoms, including trouble breathing, shortness of breath, cough, or chest pain. Before taking Ibrance, tell your doctor if you have fever, chills, or other signs of infection, liver or kidney problems, are or plan to become pregnant, or are breastfeeding. Common side effects include low red blood cell and low platelet counts, infections, tiredness, nausea, sore mouth, abnormalities in liver blood tests, diarrhea, hair thinning or loss, vomiting, rash, and loss of appetite.
Have you heard about Lendistry? Lendistry is a national Black-led small business lender that is headquartered right here in LA. Once you've started your business, Lendistry provides flexible financing options starting at $50,000 to help you access the affordable capital needed to grow. Whether financing is needed to increase working capital, acquire a business, purchase inventory and equipment, or refinance debt, Lendistry has a solution for you. Lending products range from traditional business term loans and non-revolving lines of credit to SBA 7A loans and commercial real estate financing. Lendistry's pre-application process is simple and does not impact your credit score. Visit lendistry.com/KBLA to learn more and to get started with an application right from the website.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DePrima on First Things First.
Yeah, so joining us this morning, we have a Newsmax personality. She's also an active leader in the New Jersey State Republican Party, which means you probably know my brother, by the way. And she is,
Oh, really?
yeah, my brother is Raz Baraka. He's the mayor of Newark, New Jersey.
Oh, sure. I was just in Newark, as a matter of fact, like yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah, and he throws a banging party at the League of Municipalities. From what I hear.
Yeah, right. But it's
I'm
not
kidding.
just
I've
for the
definitely
record,
been to the
not
party.
financed by affirmative action. Not at all.
Really? That is interesting. That's weird. How does he able to do that without
Whatever. When you're the mayor of a city, I think you have access to various resources, and
how did
many
he even
people.
become a mayor though? Was it an affirmative action election, or did he just?
You know what? You'd have to tell me your definition of affirmative action, because the question you just posed is a false dichotomy. Was it affirmative action or did he earn it? Affirmative action is undoing harms that have been done.
Totally being
okay. We'll let that one slide then. So
just joking.
So we spent a lot of time yesterday on this show talking about the decision of a judge in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to dismiss a case by the 3 surviving members of the Tulsa race riot, the Black Wall Street, saying that even though they were present at the scene and at least one could prove their home was burned to the ground, that they couldn't prove individual harm, and that just because you're affiliated with an historical event doesn't mean that you have a right to sue. So she ruled in favor of the city and the state in saying that those people who have literally waited 100 years for their day in court do not have standing. What are your thoughts?
Right. I was reading about this the other day, and I was like, oh, God. And when I heard about this many years ago, just such a tragic, horrible thing that happens. I want to be clear, and I am in no way minimizing the tragedy of that event and the inaction from the government. But I do think that from the judge's perspective, she had to be able to make a legal connection. And I'm not sure that she could make a legal connection. There's a huge moral and emotional case to be made, absolutely. But I'm not sure that they could make the legal case. Like I totally get both sides.
Okay, but
I
now you sound like a politician, because the fact is, even if I'm two and I'm in my house and my house is burnt to the ground and I have to flee, then I have to spend the rest of my life working as a maid for the very people who burnt down my house. That to me is clearly an ongoing, and none of those people received insurance payments. They never got their property back. There were no measures taken by the city. So now 100-year life is lived at a different level financially. I mean, this is your area of expertise. Yeah. The trajectory of her earnings over the course of a lifetime were radically changed, going from being a middle-class little girl that lived in a home that was owned by her parents to being a maid with no net worth.
So if you're saying that the law should be changed so that people in this situation can be compensated, that is something I'd be willing to explore. It may not be
it's the judge's interpretation of the law. It's the judge's interpretation of the law. And I hope this goes all the way to the Supreme Court, because she calls herself a constitutional conservative. Maybe you can explain what that is.
Well, that means that you go by the Constitution as it is written. You can't make the people who are constitutional conservatives. You go by the law as it is written.
I mean, I know what it literally means, but it can mean different things to different people, because which version of the Constitution, and again, it's open to your interpretation. And somehow folks that call themselves that always seem to fall on the conservative side, on the corporate side of that interpretation.
Because this, in my opinion, is the right way to do it. That you can't create slippery slopes in emotional arguments. You got to put things in writing. So again, the Constitution can be changed, and in my opinion, especially when you're talking about, like you said, generational wealth, and how she, it's your grandmother's house that was burned down, and that person is clearly directly affected. I think
that was actually her mama's house.
I apologize.
I mean, you don't even have to go back a generation, right? Yeah, I'm just saying. Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, that is, to me, you can make, from an economic perspective and a personal finance perspective, you can absolutely draw those lines and draw those connections, and the law should catch up with it. You know, the people who are elected in Congress should get on that. Somebody should introduce a bill.
I mean, but why do we need a bill that if someone burns down my house and I never get insurance and I never get my property back, that I can show that I've been directly harmed? That I don't think. Do we need a new bill for that? People get compensated for much less than that.
Listen, we need new bills to change the name of a street. We need new bills to do all kinds of very.
I think we need new judges. I think we need new judges in this case. But so.
But you know what? You wouldn't need a new judge if you had the law in place.
Well, I think the law is in place because a judge can always interpret. I mean, look at the Dred Scott case. A judge or justice or a court, as in our extreme court that we currently have, can always interpret a law to fit their political agenda. So doesn't necessarily. Well, we've seen it. We've seen it happening before our eyes. As rights are dismantled, as our current justices, several of them lied and said they believe in precedent and stare decisis, and then rush in there and overturn Roe versus Wade and affirmative action and legalize discrimination, all within the course of a year.
Right, but if they did the same thing with other cases to right or wrong, the Supreme Court has done that many times. Why not in these cases? I mean, to me, affirmative action is like crystal clear that was not legal to do. That you can't, like that was what we fought for, to not be judged based on.
You know what? But that's bullshit. I can't say that on the radio, because the fact of the matter is that affirmative action is not discrimination. It is a repair. It is a remedy for 12 generations of our families that worked without pay, for the Jim Crow, for the exclusion of us from education, and things like the GI Bill. That's not discrimination. That's a remedy. But your extreme court did what they did, so we have to deal with that. I get it. But the question I'm coming back to here, when we're talking about Greenwood, we said, okay, I call that restitution. It's something they had that was taken away from them that they want back. Not the same as reparation, which is repairing harm that you did to me, i.e. our enslavement. It sounds like you don't believe in either one of those.
Did they have a direct connection that said that this woman was definitely going to inherit this home? There's a lot of unpredictables and things that can't be proven in the case.
Even if she didn't inherit the house, she would have lived in it and had a middle-class lifestyle and gone to a school that was burned to the ground, a black school in a middle-class black neighborhood where her best interests were taken into account. I mean, even if she didn't inherit the house, the lifestyle would have yielded different outcomes. And I think, that's not mysterious. That is what it is.
No, I think you're probably right about that. Had I grown up in a different area and under different circumstances, my outcome might very well have been
okay. But
different.
we have some folks that want to talk to you, so I want to go to the phones. But the question was, do you believe in reparation or restitution or both?
I believe in restitution, but the restitution has to be legal and provable. It can't be conjecture. Because I truly believe that the law.
So you're saying that Miss Viola Fletcher was about conjecture, that even though her community was burned to the ground, and she never got her stuff back, and she was working as a maid her whole life, that's conjecture to you?
I'm not saying that that's conjecture. What I'm saying is that the law doesn't support not being able to directly prove that. And the judge's job is to interpret the law.
Well, we'll see what happens when it goes all the way to your extreme court. But it sounds like part 2 of that is you don't believe in reparations.
Not at all. And it's not that it's not so much that I don't think that, like I said earlier, I do believe that there were effects. But the problem is you can't do it based on skin color. Now, I'll tell you this: if they could do reparations that's not based on skin color, that uses other data.
Okay, right
metrics,
now you do sound like
then
you're in the sunken
right.
place because enslavement was based on skin color. So how are you going to repair something based on skin color without taking skin color into account? The entire concept of race is based on phenotype, skin color, how you look.
Okay,
That's
so-
what made you enslaved.
Okay, so what do you do about the people who sold the slaves to the people who, the Africans?
That,
Like,
you know what?
if you are
First of all, that was a
if you're
very
a
small
descendant-
percentage of what happened. But second of all, that's an African situation. We're talking about the United States. We're talking about the United States of America, what America owes to black people, the debt, as Randall Robinson would say. And so that's a straw man argument.
those people that would benefit, and that does not make any sense to me. Also,
So
what
just-
about the white people who fought against it? Why should they have
Okay,
to
but
pay?
what does that
How
have to
does
do?
that
If I
fit?
fight against an injustice, that doesn't mean.
Because you're in their pocket.
But
and
they
were
still
never- they were
benefit.
never
But
first
they still benefit from the systemic racism, even if they were so-called good white people. Which I find it very interesting that is your number one priority. A few white folks who stood against slavery, they shouldn't have to help. Most of those folks would be happy to help. More with Melanie Collette after News, Traffic, and Sports on KBLA Talk 1580.
A safe place to go loud. A great place for progressive politics. KBLA Talk 1580.
Thank you for sharing a part of your Tuesday morning with us here on the Black Information Network. I'm Mike Moore. Now, here's the latest. It still isn't clear as to how a small bag of cocaine ended up in the White House. The Secret Service is continuing its investigation into who brought the drugs into the West Wing and could wrap it up early this week. Agents found the powder during a routine sweep of the building on July 2nd while President Biden and his family were at Camp David for the holiday weekend. African-American actor Hill Harper is planning to run for U.S. Senate in Michigan. He's running as a Democrat for retiring Debbie Stabenow's seat. Alyssa Slotkin. His website frames Harper as a dedicated lawyer, actor, and single father, and his announcement video is dedicated to his son, who is adopted. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Hot, dry weather means making sure water isn't wasted. So for the love of water, California, everyone has a part to play when it comes to reducing water use. Let's make conservation a way of life. Find ways to conserve at SaveOurWater.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Chris Eubanks has two very important distinctions attached to his name. He's only the third black American male tennis player to reach the quarterfinals at Wimbledon. He's also the only American male left on the Wimbledon bracket. Eubanks, who grew up in Atlanta, continues his push towards history tonight. He faces Daniil Medvedev of Russia in the quarterfinals. Only two other black American males made it to the Wimbledon quarterfinals. The legendary Arthur Ashe did it in 1968, 1969, and 1975. Malachi Washington made it in 1996. The Dodgers will have three starters in tonight's Major League Baseball All-Star game in Seattle. Right fielder Mookie Betts, first baseman Freddie Freeman, and designated hitter J.D. Martinez. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
2 years down, many more years to go. We're just getting started at KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Maisha Cairo here with a quick recap for my time at JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. There were speakers Ian Dunlap, Damon John, Lynn Richardson, MC Light, Don Kennedy, to name a few. Take a listen to what Justin Grant, Community Development Lead at Chase's Advancing Black Pathway, let's see what he had to say.
So I'm Justin Grant. I lead community development and national partnerships for JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Pathway strategy. And so we're focused on strengthening the economic foundation of black communities, and we're making targeted investments in programs like the Advancing Black Wealth Tour to help us get our tools and resources out to the community to drive sustained impact over time.
So when it comes to black and brown people, it sounds like Chase is making it their personal responsibility not only to facilitate these events, but to educate and provide resources. So, Mr. Grant, I have to ask, what does wealth building look like for the individual?
It's home ownership, it's having that freedom to be able to start your own business and create jobs in your community, and it's having that long-term plan towards retirement, having that vision for what you want your life to be, and you have the resources to actually live it.
I'm Aisha Cairo. Thanks for sticking around. That was my recap from Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. First stop was here in LA, and they're taking it national.
You're listening to K-Drip, where we play all the best classic water-wasting hits like Sprinklers in the Rain and Leaky Faucets. They're tunes from another time because now that we face a hotter, drier future, every drop counts. Despite an extremely wet winter, keep using less water, fixing leaks, and reusing indoor water for your garden. Visit SaveOurWater.com for more ways to conserve. Up next, brushing your teeth with the water on.
K-Drip. Some people won't give you the real talk on drugs, but it's time we know the facts. Fentanyl is killing people. It's a powerful opioid, often made illegally and commonly mixed with illicit drugs. It can even be pressed into counterfeit pills that resemble prescription medications. Just 2 milligrams, about the size of a few grains of sand, can potentially be lethal. This isn't an ad to scare you, but it is an ad to make you think twice. Get the facts. Go to realdealonfentanyl.com. This message is brought to you by the Ad Council.
Black Lives Matters turns 10, and KBLA Talk 1580 is proud to be the exclusive media partner of the People's Justice Festival. This Saturday, July 15th, 12 to 6 p.m. in Leimert Park. Come join us as we celebrate the life-saving and history-making work of Black Lives Matter to help bend the arc of the moral universe toward justice. There will be live music performances, a children's village, giveaways, vendors, a healing justice space, Skillshare, and amazing speakers including Green Party presidential candidate Dr. Cornel West, live on stage at 4:30 p.m. For more information, go to blmgrassroots.org. That's www.blmgrassroots.org. Dominique DePrima and Tavis Smiley will be main stage hosts throughout the day, and the KBLA Talk 1580 delegation will be out in full force. So, join us this Saturday, July 15th, 12 to 6 p.m. at Leimert Park as we celebrate the 10th anniversary of Black Lives Matter. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Plant my seeds now, rooted. Brown skin popping, I'm rooted. Can pull the hood out me, I'm rooted. Rooted, nappy head, rooted.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
You got a big mouth.
Hello, Joe, you're up. Welcome. We're unapologetically progressive, and we don't black down.
We are talking with Melanie Collette. She is a conservative commentator and a member of the New Jersey State Republican Party and a contributor to Newsmax. Before we get back into it, Ms. Collette, because I got a bunch of sort of quick questions that I'd like to ask you just to get your take as far as your financial expertise is one of the things you dedicate yourself to is financial literacy. I want to go to Mimi calling us from Jacksonville. Hi, Mimi.
Hi, Dominique. Hi, everyone. I just want to say that if you, the judge, anyone, if you can look at Mother Fletcher and her baby brother Red and not think that those people deserve reparations or some form of legal compensation, something is wrong with you, because that town, Greenwood, Tulsa, Oklahoma, all of those black people were murdered, maimed, destroyed by white people because they were black and they were prosperous, period. And they deserve compensation. White people, slavery is the original sin. Europeans kidnapped Africans from the continent, brought us here to stolen land. Indigenous people were here first, before. This is their land. White people, they have to deal with what their ancestors did.
Okay, so Mimi, I guess we've lost Mimi. Do you want to respond to what she said, Melanie Collette?
The only I don't disagree with what she said from a moral perspective, but I do think it is hazardous to make people responsible for something that they did not directly do.
Well, this was but this lawsuit, the plaintiffs were the defendants were the county and the city. The state and the city. So, the city is the same city that failed to react, and that same city that had the money in their coffers, that has it now. So, I don't know that argument holds up here.
It does, because the city and the state are not these ambiguous organizations. The money comes from the people. It comes from
the people of
taxpayers,
including the people of Greenwood, who had all of their things, all of their money, all of their land stolen. And part of the argument is the fact that the city set up a Black Wall Street museum, which they are profiting by, and which they are not sharing with the victims of that particular. Now it's a tourist destination that profits the state and the city, but not the victims.
Who is profiting from that museum?
The city and the state.
Right. And what makes up the city and the state?
The people, but the point is they're pimping the story of the victims that they refuse to give compensation to. Okay, let's let Mimi get one more word in. I think we've got her back. Go ahead, Mimi, real quick. Mimi, you there? Oh, I guess she's not back. So we can see that we agree to disagree on that one. If you don't believe in reparation because you're concerned that some descendant of a good white person that fought on our side wouldn't get their money, or that somehow people that weren't, people that weren't there, right? Okay, so you're against reparation. So here's the question: how do you make up for those 12 generations? You're an economic expert. 12 generations of our ancestors who worked without pay. How do you make up for the Greenwoods, of which this was not a one-off? There are literally hundreds of similar stories where Black people built up wealth and jealous, angry, racist white people burnt their stuff down, took their stuff. Do you just pretend that never happened, or is there a conservative methodology that would make us whole financially?
I don't know that there is a methodology to make that whole. Maybe I should switch my PhD study to that.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it because if you don't agree with reparations, which right now is just saying we're going to fix this, there's no one thing that is reparations. Then what do you agree with? What is the solution? Because there are wealth disparities that are definitely tied to 12 generations of free labor given by my ancestors and probably yours.
It has to be provable, and then you have to have certain things in place. When I had this discussion with someone else on your station, I can't remember the show, I apologize. One of the things that I brought up was what I just said a few minutes ago about the fact that you, in order to get that money from a logistical standpoint, you would necessarily have to overtax people in order to get that money.
You know what? We've been overtaxed since our enslavement. Okay, but hold on one second, though, because
that's fine, but from a realistic economic standpoint, you're also creating inflation.
Now we're responsible for inflation. You know what? That is such a concept. You've got so many excuses. Yeah, but no, it is an excuse because you've got every economic reason in the world why we don't get our money. It's not emotional. Forget the emotion. Have you read the California Task Force report? It's a 500-page report that clearly proves the case. So, and that's just one. We can have one for each of the 50 states. So
it's economics.
So you've got, but no, there's economics is 101, whatever that is. Here's one of my other questions for you. You talk about inflation, and Republicans and conservatives like to say, "Oh, it's because of subsidies that happened during the pandemic," without taking into account corporate gouging, the war in Ukraine, the supply chain. So economics, when you talk about economic theory, it's theory. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. Some economists think this, and some economists
one of the
think
things
that.
that's probably not in my bio that I taught is economics as well. And so, in my belief, financial literacy and economics should be taught together, but that's another conversation for another day.
Well, I think we can agree on that.
Right? So economics 101 says when you devalue the dollar, things cost more. And when you overtax your citizens, things are going to cost more. So you're chasing your tail.
But
from an
but here comes the thing. Here comes the thing, Miss Collette. With all due respect,
Also,
which citizens? Because we are severely undertaxing the very rich in this country, and we consistently overtax the poor. Because even if you don't have to pay income tax according to the formula, you're paying a disproportionately large amount of your income in sales tax. So when you say overtaxing, who are we talking about? We haven't overtaxed Jeff Bezos once ever in history.
In my opinion, all of it is overtaxing. It's darn near stealing what the government does as far as taxes are concerned.
But our taxes are so much lower than they were in the Reagan era or the Bush era, especially for the rich and the upper middle class. So that's another.
Well, what is 50% tax rate considered low?
Well,
that's what we're talking about. 50%
you know
of the
what?
money you make.
Okay, I can see why they have you on Newsmax, but the point of it.
But I'm just saying,
because lots of conservatives like to make things up. Jeff Bezos, but that doesn't happen. Most of our billionaires are not even paying taxes. They pay little or nothing. They pay less than the average worker at a Trader Joe's. So that's just let's just make things up.
I'm not making it up.
50%. Who pays that? Who pays 50% tax rate?
Listen, okay.
Yeah, nobody. Exactly. I rest my case.
It's more like 40%. It's more like 40%.
That's a pretty big difference, Miss Collette. Okay, I've got a bunch of people that want to talk to you on the phone, so we'll do that when we come forward. We'll skip my questions and go to theirs. It's KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
Hollywood Walk of Fame stars in 2024. Stay tuned to find out who's in next year's class. I'm Aisha Cairo with your K-Black Minute News. A new group of 31 entertainment professionals across film, television, radio, recording, and sports entertainment will have their names etched into Hollywood's history in 2024. One of the most celebrated names on the list was the beloved Chadwick Boseman. Others for the class of 2024 in Hollywood Walk of Fame was this year's Oscar winner Michelle Yeoh in the motion picture category. Other notable names include Chris Pine, Gwen Stefani, Andre, Dr. Dre, Young, Otis Redding, Christina Ricci, Brandy Norwood, Harry Washington, and more. The dates for the star ceremonies have not yet been scheduled. To find out all 31 inductees, visit youtube.com/Walk of Fame.
Hey LA, are you feeling the heat? LA DWP has rebates up to $225 on new air conditioners to help you beat the heat and save money. Plus, you can sign up for Level Pay to get predictable monthly bills for easy budgeting. Stay cool. Visit LADWP.com/COOL-LA. That's LADWP.com/COOL-LA.
UNITY stands for unity
in our community. Mental health struggles can sometimes go unnoticed. The suicide rate among Black youth has risen faster than any other ethnic group. Only 1 in 3 African Americans who need mental health care receives it. African American women are only half as likely as their Caucasian counterparts to seek professional mental health services. Even those who guide us spiritually can sometimes face their own challenges. 45% of pastors say they've experienced depression or burnout to the extent they need to take a leave of absence from ministry. As people of faith, it's time to acknowledge it's okay not to be okay. You can pray and get help. Visit normalizehelp.org for more information and resources. Join us in raising mental health awareness in our community. funded by the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health and the Champion Counseling Center of Faithful Central Bible Church.
To my hometown, my community. Some of you have known me my whole life. Do you notice anything different about the kids in the neighborhood? Ever paid attention? You might start with gifts, money, attention. These are signs. Child trafficking is happening right here in this town. So don't just watch through the window. Pay attention. Because the more we know, the more we'll all know to say no. Learn the signs to look for and how to help at no-to-say-no.com.
Your ancestors' favorite radio station, and your favorite morning show host. Let's get back to Dominique DePrima right now.
Talking with Melanie Collette. She's an active member of the New Jersey State Republican Party and part of Project 21. I got to say that, well, let's go straight to the phones. Let's go to Fahima calling us from D.C. Hi, Fahima.
Yes, thank you for taking my call, Dominique. And Ms. Collette, actually, you were on the Areva Martin show, and I spoke to you at that time. And I just want to pose a couple of questions to you and lay out a few things. Because, one, you contended that reparations means taking something away from white people, and that's how you approached it when you were on the Areva Martin show. But I just want to run these few examples down to you. When Georgetown University sold enslaved Africans to save the university, it was determined that their reparations would be provide legacy scholarships to descendants of those Africans that were sold. Loudoun County, Virginia, closed the schools in order to not comply with Brown versus Board of Education. So now they're going to provide scholarships to those descendants that are still alive that were denied an education. And just like in Evanston, Illinois, they're using the revenue from marijuana sales to provide reparations to those people who were victims of housing discrimination, redlining, and et cetera. Now, the folks in Greenwood, these were the children of people like the late John Hope Franklin, who was a child also. Their house was burned to the ground and their property.
Okay, tight on time here, Fahima, because it's close to the end of the show. So I need you to land for me.
I'm sorry. So these people were denied generational wealth, and reparation doesn't mean taking anything away from white people. It simply means making someone whole. And I'll hang up and listen.
Thank you, Fahima. Your response, Melanie Collette.
You're making someone whole. Right. You're making someone whole with whose money. And then what is the number, and is that number provable? That's
but you said you're against reparations. So none of what you just said is even relevant, because if I come up with a number that you like and it's provable and whatever which it's clearly provable, then you're still going to have another excuse. White people
how is it clearly provable?
It's clearly provable that my family was enslaved. I have actually have a picture of my great-great-grandmother who was enslaved and who was so-called freed when she was a teenager. Many of us have receipts. I'm not going down that rabbit hole with you, because you said off the bat, because you said that you're against reparation. The reality is it doesn't matter. The reality is it doesn't matter what I say, because you are against repairing the damage of slavery, i.e. reparations. Let's go to Mustafa. Good morning, Mustafa. I believe he's calling from
Good morning. Good morning. I'd like to ask the young lady, did you have this same fight when the Obama administration gave out $12 million to the Holocaust survivors?
No, I didn't. That was not, nobody asked. No, I didn't.
Okay, well, he's asking now, so you're fine with that?
I would imagine that if he did do that was something that was provable.
And reparations for Japanese Americans, you don't have a problem with that? They were.
Yeah,
that was fine.
Listen, if you can do it legally and provable, I am good with that.
So then you're for reparations. So then you're actually for reparations, because we are talking about doing it legally and provable. And if it ain't legal, changing the law, because we deserve justice.
You're talking about the report that was submitted in California with the 100 and some odd suggestions with no regulations associated with that.
Well,
they were really just ideas.
Yeah, well, that was
Okay?
the job
And
of the task force. It's not just ideas, it's also research based on extensive testimony and scholarly academic input. It's not just suggestions,
And what
it
they're
is.
asking for is literally larger than California's entire budget. So it is not doable.
For
And
1
this is
year,
why I'm
well, you ain't going to
against
pay
it.
off 12
And
generations of free labor in one fiscal year. That's not how that works. And you know that because you're a
yes, it
financial
would be an
expert.
installment.
Apparently,
Right.
just like our oppression wasn't installed. However it goes down, you can't say, well, I took something from you. I owe you money, but it's too much money, and I don't have that much money, so therefore I'm not going to pay you at all.
But the
That's
people
your
that are
argument.
paying,
The number's too
the
big.
people that
Well,
you're
if
asking
you
to pay
the number's too big, but guess what?
did
You
not
got
take
the money.
anything.
That's wrong. They received
So let me ask you
generational
this.
wealth that we were stripped of. I guess you don't believe in the concept of generational wealth?
So will poor white people, kids who are born to drug addicted parents who are white, who are put in the system, they should pay because they're white and they had the privilege?
That's another
that
straw
sounds
man
right to me.
argument because I'm happy
It's
that
not a
someone
straw,
is
it's a
so
legitimate
concerned about the
argument.
welfare of poor white people. I also am concerned about the welfare of poor white people. But again,
And this is
systemic
why I bring
racism has
Christianity in.
created economic disparities that need to be remedied. And yes, they are provably and directly traceable to our enslavement, 12 generations of unpaid labor. And that's not something I made up. So I think to reduce the California report to a bunch of suggestions is very disingenuous. Let's go to Morris calling us from Inglewood. Hi, Morris.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Listen, real quick comment. The slave owners, they got their money when the slave people, when the slaves were released. And also in India is having a lot of artifacts returned to them because of what the British stole and what other countries stole for them.
Africa,
from them.
too. Nigeria, too. Yeah. So you're talking about like people like the French who got reparations because they had to give up their slaves.
That's why you're on the radio, Dominique, because you're reading, you're real smart. But yes, see, a lot of people don't have the awareness and the knowledge that you have. Apparently, your guest doesn't either.
I'm on the radio too, baby. What are we doing? I'm on TV. What are we talking about? Let's not
Okay, I'm on TV too. I mean, that doesn't make us smart. It just makes us employable. I mean, what is that? That doesn't give us any kind of credibility. It's just our job.
I was just basing it on what he said. That's all.
Okay, well, we don't have time for all of the questions that I have for you, but I'm sure you want to address what Morris said about the return of artifacts and the artifacts that still need to be returned, like those stolen diamonds in the British crowns, and the artifacts.
Do they know who has them? Then go get them. Absolutely.
Do they know who has them? They're wearing them at the coronation. I mean, give me a break. Yeah, it's widely known.
Now you're talking about over.
Well,
yeah,
he's talking
somebody
about
needs to
artifacts and artwork that's being returned to Nigeria, that's being returned to Benin, India, and he's talking about the reparations that were paid by people like the French were paid money because they had to give up their human property. It's one of the reasons why Haiti is in such bad economic shape is because they had to pay for their own freedom, which is money the French really should pay back to the Haitian government.
Realize that if you're going to tax people to pay these reparations, you're doing the same thing. You're making black people pay for their own freedom. It's the same principle.
No, it's not the same principle at all. That's ridiculous. No,
you can't legally have race-based taxes. You can't do that.
It's not. Well, that's your interpretation of the law, and it's not a tax. No, it's not a tax. It's a debt. My dear, it's a little different. We're not talking about taxing you in perpetuity. You got the money from where the money went. Where did those 12 generations? And that's what the point Fahima makes so well. Georgetown specifically has traced where their money went. How did they save the university? By literally selling your mama or your great grandmama. So now they have to go back and pay back what they profited. America has profited on the state level, city, on the federal level, and corporations have profited. So all of those are different levels of reparations, and all of them need to be addressed.
But we are part of America. I'm part of America.
Yep.
You're part of America.
As am I, right? But we didn't get our fair share. So that's why we need America needs to make good and do what it did. I'm sorry you're in foster care and that you're, a victim of predatory capitalism as a poor white person. And I hope you wake up and understand the reasons why. But the fact of the matter is we are specifically talking about the harm of, what Mimi called the original sin of the United States, which is the enslavement of people of African descent. And that cannot be generalized out into a tax. It is a repair of a specific harm.
Exactly. So you would have to prove who specifically did the harm, not the poor kid who is below the poverty line, who happens to be white, because
Lord. Okay. I get. I hear the same talking points recycling, so I guess that means you're running out of them. It's absolutely a talking point. What about the poor white people who didn't profit? It's absolutely a talking point, and it's a ridiculous talking point because somehow it doesn't apply to anyone else except black people. Everyone else is welcome to be made whole for harm.
Should have a reparations tax on their.
There will be. There's no reparations tax.
It had nothing to do with it.
There's no reparations. Okay, you know what? I'm sorry to say that. I'll give you like 30 seconds to make your point because we're out of time. You'll have to come back and argue with me again, Miss Collette. It's been a pleasure.
I want to spend this time to thank you so much for a respectful conversation and your audience for being amazing. This was a great conversation. I look forward to doing it again. And I appreciate you all very much for always handling me with respect. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Well, the respect is the bottom line, right? Tell them how they can yell at you virtually or whatever, how they can find you.
You can send your hate tweets to @NJGOP on Twitter. And you can, of course, follow me on Facebook at Melanie Collette Presents or Money Talk with Melanie on Facebook. I appreciate you so very much.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate the conversation. Wow. You talk about a U-turn. Dr. Melina Abdullah of Black Lives Matter Grassroots and BLMLA is up next in studio on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Thank you for sharing a part of your Tuesday morning with us here on the Black Information Network. I'm Mike Moore. Now, here's the latest. It still isn't clear as to how a small bag of cocaine ended up in the White House. The Secret Service is continuing its investigation into who brought the drugs into the West Wing and could wrap it up early this week. Agents found the powder during a routine sweep of the building on July 2nd while President Biden and his family were at Camp David for the holiday weekend. African-American actor Hill Harper is planning to run for U.S. Senate in Michigan. He's running as a Democrat for retiring Debbie Stabenow's seat. Alyssa Slotkin. His website frames Harper as a dedicated lawyer, actor, and single father, and his announcement video is dedicated to his son, who is adopted. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Chris Eubanks has two very important distinctions attached to his name. He's only the third black American male tennis player to reach the quarterfinals at Wimbledon. He's also the only American male left on the Wimbledon bracket. Eubanks, who grew up in Atlanta, continues his push towards history tonight. He faces Daniil Medvedev of Russia in the quarterfinals. Only two other black American males made it to the Wimbledon quarterfinals. The legendary Arthur Ashe did it in 1968, 1969, and 1975. Malachi Washington made it in 1996. The Dodgers will have three starters in tonight's Major League Baseball All-Star game in Seattle. Right fielder Mookie Betts, first baseman Freddie Freeman, and designated hitter J.D. Martinez. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
2 years ago.